common in the narcissistic abuse community, the idea of narcissistic control. Money is another big factor they try to use. They want to keep you impoverished in order for them to exert control over you. And, as intuitives, INFJs and ENFJs, as I said, free will is a big part of who we are. Specifically with INFJs, you don't want to back us in a corner and make us feel like we can't say no. We turn real angry and real ragey real fast. And, if need be, we'll get violent. It's been known to happen. ENFJs, being people pleasers, they're a little bit more manipulative in this respect because they, in general, care more about like what people think of them, whereas INFJs, we more or less embrace the fact that we're different and march to the beat of a different drum. We're very selective of who we open up to, who we trust. So, that need for approval from a large group, we're when it comes to trusting people and friends in general, we're definitely quality over quantity type people. So, what are some tactics of narcissistic control? Well, giving examples from my own life, trying to influence your career path, especially if that career would automatically take you out of the narcissistic environment, take you out of the narcissistic town and away from your family. In my case, since I was 17 years old, I wanted to be a professional firefighter. And as I've stated before, though I live in the suburb of one of the biggest cities in the United States that has 750,000 people, that county does not have professional firefighters because the way Pennsylvania is and its corrupt state system where they don't do emergency services on the county level like every other state does. So, that's a rarity in Pennsylvania. So that would, aside from the city of Philadelphia, that would pretty much require me to leave the area. And my family fought against that, even back in the day when I was doing it for the first time. I mean, I put myself through EMT school at 17 years old. I was a junior firefighter. I forewent acceptances and even some partial scholarships to some big name schools to pursue a fire science degree at night at the local community college while I was traveling around 3 different states testing for various fire departments that were testing at the time. And they fought against that because they knew, once I got out of the area, they would never have any control over me again. I mean, firefighters don't make great money, but it's certainly enough money where you can be financially stable and not living paycheck to paycheck and be, not dependent on anyone, which is great. So they didn't want me to have that. They wanted to keep me controlled and in the path that they wanted me in. And in my case, my family's been steering me towards golf course maintenance since I was 16 years old. Why? Because, narcissists love the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, so country club culture is a big part of that. And I'm going to do a video in a little bit, maybe later today or in the next few days, about the narcissism of country club culture and my observations of it over 10 years in the industry at very many clubs and having been on the road with the PGA Tour for a little bit as an agronomist. So I took a job at a country club when I was 16 years old, summer job, money for a car, there was overtime, and it was 2 miles from my house. And that's all it was, I mean, as most 16-year-olds can attest to, the job you take, it's, you need a paycheck, you need money. But in this case, they started exerting even then, like, oh, well, that's your career, that's it, like you got to not just stay in that field, but at that specific country club for the duration of my career. And they knew, and I was very vocal at the time about how much I hated the job. I mean, it was 5:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, 7 days a week, even though that violated Pennsylvania child labor laws, at least at the time, which stated that people under 18 couldn't work more than 8 hours per day and no more than 44 hours per week. And I was 55, 60 hours a week at the time, and not getting paid holiday pay for holidays I had to work. I mean, it's golf maintenance. Just stay the fuck away from it. Like, if you're thinking about going in this industry, leave a comment and we'll figure out a way to email or something. I will give you the truth, and then you can make up your own mind from there. But you should definitely talk to someone who actually unfortunately lived it. So, the narcissistic control, they said to me at the time, and keep in mind this is 2006, so this is pre-recession, that college, 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 got to go to college, got to have that 4-year degree. It's so important, mainly because it's so they can brag about where their relatives going to school. Because again, with the narcissist, especially the narcissistic boomers, it's all about keeping up with the Joneses, and it's all about what they want. You, me, all of us, we're just an extension of them. We only exist to serve them. We're pawns on the chessboard that they play with other boomers in their narcissistic game of, I have it better. I have more things. Whoever dies with the most toys wins. It's all a game to them. It's a game of materialism. Narcissists aren't deep thinkers. I mean, they're good plotters. A lot of them are good bullshitters, but they're not. Like we are as INFJs and ENFJs. They're not deep intuitive thinkers who likes to get to the meaning of things, understand the meaning behind things, and are driven by our emotions. They're driven by praise, adoration, and people thinking they're the greatest thing ever, or in some cases, especially in my family, the the most wronged martyr ever. But that's a case for a different story. So, in terms of relationships, they will try to manipulate you to date who they want. I mean, they've tried to do it with me unsuccessfully. I mean, I'm an INFJ, so we're notoriously picky and we know what we want. In my case, it's, we'll just go by personality. I'm not going to get into physical characteristics, but I'm drawn, no surprise, to ENFJs. Yeah, ENFJs, you're awesome. You understand us, and you're genuine sweethearts, and I love that. I wish there were more of you. Sadly, you're the second rarest type, second only to mine. So there's that. But they tried to manipulate me into relationships with very, how can I say this? Very materialistic, very shallow, very superficial, very unfaithful type people who mentally never left high school, which, as I discussed before, is a common trait among narcissists in general. That tribalism, that high school clique culture, they love it. They eat it up. So they don't ever want that to end, even long after they graduate. They try to continue to perpetuate that environment and that culture of the cool kids table and all that, and they're so great, and they're just great because they say they are, and you can't question it or ask them what makes you so great or what gives you authority. No, 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 that makes you the villain. So they'll do narcissistic control in a lot of ways. They'll try to put you down behind your back. They'll try to level institutions against you, try to slander your name to institutions where, like, you're trying to get a job. I mean, I know my mother's sister called fire departments I was applying to and tried to slander my name. I know this because back in the day I was fairly close with the recruitment captain at the one, and he told me. And, she was very pissed off when, he said, well, if this is a concern to you, are you like a medical professional anyway? Do you have like some kind of medical documentation for these claims? And she's like, no, I just know. And I remember Captain Tobias was like, so what's your proof? Like, we've tested him extensively with, you know, psychological professionals that were once FBI profiles. I said, well, I just know. And he's like, well, this is just hearsay. I can't just take your word for it. She's like, don't, and mind you, this is 2 states away in Virginia where this fire department. She's like, don't you know who I am? And he's like, no. No, who are you? Are you a doctor? And she's like, well, no, I'm a high-ranking secretary. And he's like, you're a secretary? He's like, this has no bearing on our hiring process. And he just hung up on it. And she was absolutely flabbergasted by that because, these narcissists have such an overinflated sense of self-importance, and they assume, or they're delusional enough to believe, that the rest of the world views them the way they view themselves. I mean, they become so encompassed in believing their own delusions that they just completely lose touch with reality and just assume that they're the greatest person ever because they decided that they are. So we'll try to do things like that. Like I said, when, and that usually occurs when they know that you're about to succeed at what you want to do. You'll see the narcissist go into panic mode, and they'll try to tell you you're going to fail. They'll try to level institutions against you. As I said, they will do anything they can to keep their precious status quo of abuse cycles, continuing, to keep you miserable, to keep you trapped, to keep you poor, to keep you down, to get inside your head, to where you start believing their accusations, to where it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and where you start to doubt your own abilities. And, as INFJs and ENFJs, we overthink too much as it is. So someone else trying to get in our head and kick us while we're down, that can be very detrimental to us, because we're also perfectionists, and we're also notorious of being, very hard, very critical of ourselves. We're often more critical of ourselves than anyone else, and that's something, we have to learn how to cope with and find ways out of it. Particularly if you're an INFJ, you got to find ways to get out of the NITI loop, because those can be very detrimental. And word to the wise, drinking and drugs don't get you out of it. I've tried. So you got to be around people that understand you. In my case, ENFJs are great at pulling INFJs out of NITI loops. It's awesome. And INFJs, we're great at, teaching ENFJs how to stand up for themselves and say no. It's a really cool, like, power couple dynamic. Very, very symbiotic relationship between the two of us. So in that case of narcissistic control, where you suspect that the narcissist is up to something, they are. Trust your intuition. If you think they're up to something, they are. And you have to learn how to call them out with facts, or in ways that I've tried to get actual authorities on the subject to call them out, because once that they're confronted with somebody who actually does know and actually has the credentials to know what they're claiming to know, as I said, they'll crumble when you hold that mirror up to their face, because they have no justification, they have no defense of their "I just know" logic. Narcissistic control is one of the hardest aspects of narcissistic abuse to overcome. And it's because you get so beaten down with it, you fight so many battles against the control, particularly us, big on free will types, that you get worn down, and you start to believe that they may be right, and they're not. Like, they're not. As I've said before, if you think the area you're living in is messed up and it's not how, like, quote, the real world works, you're probably right, and you need to get out, and you need to find a way to do that. And you need to recognize the signs of narcissistic control. And if there's no facts and logic, and it just sounds like they want you to fall in line or get with the program and do what they want you to do, they're not looking out for you. They're trying to control you. They don't want you to live the life that you want. They want you to be, as Ollie Matthews often states, a dulled reflection of them. Basically, them, but less successful, and dependent on them, so they can maintain their spot at the top of the pyramid and look down on you, and go, "Oh, I am so great. They can never be as good as me. Everything I've ever done is the pinnacle." That's pretty common among narcissists, like I said, especially among the boomers. I'm sure it's pretty common among narcissists in general, but given my age and the age of my parents and their siblings and cousins, it's no surprise that most of the boomers I've encountered most of the narcissists, sorry, that I've encountered in my life are boomers. In a lot of cases, it'll usually be people of your parents' generation, family members, or bosses, supervisors. You usually don't encounter too many narcs your own age that exert this much narcissistic control over you, unless you're talking about, like, in a relationship setting, which I've been down that road once. I'm never going down that road again. My fellow INFJs, as it said, with relationships, when you're with Mr. or Ms. Wrong and you stay too long, door slam, we're gone. And that's what you have to do. Door slam and never look back. Don't buy into the manipulations. That's a problem with us too, and even more with the ENFJs, is we're very empathetic. So we want to help people. That's just in our nature of who we are. And narcissists will always take advantage of that and use our empathetic nature and our genuine desire to help people to control us. And that brings me to another aspect, and that's the pity-craving narcissist, the narcissist who will use narcissistic manipulation and narcissistic control in the sense that, they will act helpless and broken and act like they want help. But really what they want is for you to, wait on them and be at their beck and call and do everything for them. You have to be able to recognize the difference between someone who genuinely needs help and is doing, what they can on their own to improve their situation, and, somebody who claims that, they're miserable and want things to change, but really they're just getting off on the pity that other people give them. And that's, that falls into the histrionic category of cluster B personality disorders and narcissistic abuse. And you have to recognize the over dramatic, over the top histrionics of poor me and all that, and, analyze the situation yourself. Kick your introverted thinking into gear and figure out if A, what the person's saying is true, and B, it's like, well, what have you been doing to make it better? Like, narcissists in that histrionic sense will basically use the philosophy of, I want things to change, things suck, but I want to keep doing the same thing that's never worked and have it magically get me to where I want to be. So if you're recognizing that pattern in somebody, yeah, it's most likely, I would say almost certainly, narcissistic control, and you got to get away from that situation. Don't allow the narcs to control you and force you to go to college for a degree you don't want or go into a career you don't want, because even if you try to make the best out of it, after a few years it'll catch up with you. You'll be absolutely miserable and just frankly pissed off that you allowed yourself to be manipulated and that you wasted, years of your life. So it's just much easier to face that battle head on and tell them, no, I'm not doing this. Like, I don't care what you want. It's not your life, it's mine, and it's my decision, not yours. And again, we're talking about things that are about free will, like choices people make. We're not talking about decisions like, being a drug addict or going into organized crime. We're talking about things like, I want to be a firefighter as opposed to a golf course superintendent type stuff. Things that, is solely the decision of the person whose career in question it is. So I'm sure everybody on here has seen these tactics of narcissistic control. Like I said, it's a little different, how we deal with them for INFJs and ENFJs. We have to avoid going into our loop thinking and starting to believe their delusions and accusations. Always try to find out, what so-called facts are they trying to use for their argument, and if it's I just know, they're lying and they're trying to control you. And we have to, try our best not to overthink the situation and not to be too hard on ourselves. As I said, we're too hard on ourselves by our own nature, so that makes us more susceptible to buy into what they're saying, to take that criticism that isn't true or overinflate it to heart and start just basically thinking we can't do anything right and why bother to try. And that's especially true with us as well because of our all or nothing syndrome. If we want to do something, we want to do it full force. We don't want to do anything, halfway. Like, I want to be a professional firefighter, EMT. I'm not going to settle for being just an EMT. You want to do both. You want to do the whole thing. It's like if you want to be a successful actor, you're not going to settle for like being a recurring actor on a soap opera. You want to be like, on a primetime series or in movies. You're not going to settle for less if you're an INFJ or ENFJ. It's not worth doing if you're going to do it halfway. All or nothing syndrome. We have to learn how to cope with that. It's especially true with us in relationships too. Like, we don't do casual. Like, we're either in love or we're not. All in or all out. But that's, a topic of its own. So I just wanted to do this video, and discuss some of the tactics and signs of narcissistic control, how it's exerted onto us, the signs we need to recognize, how we can combat it, and how we have to protect ourselves against our own minds and how they work when we're in this situation. So, please leave your comments below about anything specific. Again, if you want me to go into detail about anything I discussed in this video, let me know below. And, remember, INFJs and ENFJs, your intuition is almost always right. So listen to it.